Tensions are rising in the Middle East. This as concerns over the risk of a wider conflict triggered by the Israel-Hamas war grows. The United States has dispatched more military assets to the region following what is termed recent escalations by Iran and its proxy forces, Hezbollah and Palestinian militants. At the same time, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will visit the Iranian capital tomorrow. He says the situation in the Middle East could be diffused if the United Nations Security Council calls on all parties to immediately stop any violent military actions. This comes amid the stationing of Israeli tanks and troops near the Gaza border ahead of the planned ground invasion aimed at annihilating Hamas. It was yet another night of heavy bombardment in Gaza. More than 50 Palestinians are believed to have died in the Israeli airstrikes. At the same time, Israel has stepped up its instructions to people in the north of the Gaza Strip to move south. Gazans say the military leaflets dropped in the region warn civilians that they could be identified as sympathizers with a terrorist organization if they stayed put. More than 4,300 people, including hundreds of children, have died since the conflict erupted. Hamas, meanwhile, says it fired rockets at Tel Aviv today. There has been no immediate word of damage or casualties. This as Israel says 212 people are still being held hostage by Hamas. 1,400 mainly Israeli civilians were killed in the October 7th attack. Well, to the Israeli-occupied West Bank now, where violence has also surged. Earlier today, Israeli aircraft struck a compound beneath a mosque in the Jenin refugee camp that the military said was being used by Palestinian militants to organize attacks. Israeli forces, meanwhile, killed a fifth Palestinian in the West Bank overnight, bringing the number of deaths there to 90 since the war began. Well, with violence around its borders increasing, Israel has added 14 communities close to Lebanon and Syria to its evacuation plan in the north of the country. This comes as Israel targets Hamas supporters in these regions. Israel says 6 Hezbollah fighters were killed in South Lebanon yesterday, where the Iran-backed Hezbollah has been exchanging cross-border fire with Israel. In Syria, where Iran has a military presence, missiles hit Damascus and Aleppo International Airport earlier today. Syrian state media says at least 2 workers were killed in the attack by Israel. Well, yesterday, world leaders gathered in Cairo for a peace summit hosted by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah El-Sisi-President of Egypt, of course. Conspicuous by their absence were Hamas and Israel. To talk about this and the continued bombardment of Gaza, I'm joined now by the Israeli ambassador to South Africa, Mr. Eli Belotserkovsky. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, there are, of course, growing concerns that entering day 15, 16, the bombardment continues. While leaders were discussing peace in Egypt, Israel continued its bombardment of Gaza. Is Israel against peace?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity and good afternoon. I'm a bit puzzled because when we speak about peace, it's peace between whom? Is it peace between Israel and terrorist organization that slaughtered in cold blood 1,400 innocent civilians, murdered, butchered babies, decapitated them in front of their parents, violated young women and then paraded them naked in the streets of Gaza? Is this organization with which we are planning or with which we are called to talk peace? Can you talk peace to them? Could the international coalition talk peace to ISIS? Could the allies talk peace to Nazis? Is there any possibility for peace between Israel and the Hamas? There is a possibility for peace, and we hope that we will get to peace between Israel and the Palestinian people. That's an entirely different issue, but not peace with the Hamas. You cannot have peace with terrorists that slaughter innocent families, that kidnap people, old people, Holocaust survivors, Babies separated from their families were kidnapped into Gaza. What peace can you have with them?
Depending on who you speak to, world leaders all agree that the people who hold the key to this peace, and of course we know that this has been a crisis going on for 75 years now, the people say that you and the Palestinians hold that key. So it is troubling that there are no concerted efforts to hold those discussions. I mean, what will it take for Israel, as an example, to participate in processes that are aimed at finding a solution, at the very least, to the protracted conflict in the Middle East, as I've said, that we've seen raging on for so long?
But we have been trying since the establishment of the State of Israel. We have been trying to find peace with our Palestinian neighbors. As you remember, perhaps in 1991, there was a Madrid summit, and there were Oslo Accords. Then we had withdrawn from Gaza completely in 2005. Did this bring us to peace? Unfortunately, no. After we withdrew from Gaza, Hamas took over in a violent coup in 2007, and since then, Hamas is the ruler of Gaza. And since then, Hamas is attacking Israel. And the charter of the Hamas, their main document, according to which they are acting, says openly and specifically, our aim is to destroy Israel. So do you expect from Israel to have peace talks with an organization that is aimed at its destruction, that kills innocent civilians, that takes hostages? How can you talk peace with them? All this concept of having peace with the Hamas is impossible. It doesn't work. And this operation in Gaza is aimed at dismantling the terrorist infrastructure of the Hamas. We cannot continue and wait for another attack. This will not happen. We tried. We tried to peacefully coexist with the Hamas. Every day, 20,000 Palestinian workers were entering Israel. Israel supplied water, provided electricity. We tried to do everything in our power to enable the people of Gaza to live in the best conditions they could. But this is impossible to continue with a Hamas organization that masterminded and implemented such a ferocious, barbarous attack with really some sort of medieval savagery. And I think that everybody has to condemn this attack. It's not a political issue, it's a moral issue. When you have somebody who perpetrates attack of such viciousness, of such atrocious barbarity, there is no way but to condemn it and to destroy it.
Let's talk about that moral issue, Ambassador, that you speak of. At the moment, we know, of course, that the Israeli Defense Force is on a critical mission to launch this ground offensive that it keeps on talking about. In fact, it wants to annihilate Hamas. The problem, though, comes where there are citizens involved, citizens that Israel is asking to move to the south. But we all know what the problems are in terms of some citizens who cannot possibly move to the south, where they are further trapped into poverty, into lack of any sort of infrastructure and care that they need. Some of these people that you speak of are trapped in hospitals, are trapped in churches, because that's the only refuge that they can have. A lot of people are saying that this is, tantamount to a destruction of a society. Even, of course, we saw that the United Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying a region is reeling in pain. So the problem then comes in your attempt to annihilate Hamas. Thousands of people, at least I think now we're sitting at close to 6,000 people on both fronts that have been killed.
Right. As I said before, our war is not against the people of Gaza. And every day, the Israeli army sits with international organizations that are active in Gaza to monitor the situation. There are shelters which are protected and which will not be attacked by Israeli army. We fulfill to the letter the international law. We warn in advance civil population to move from the areas that are going to be subjected to the attacks. On the other hand, there is also the other side of this formula. We have Israelis that had to leave their communities, their towns and villages from the south of Israel. We have about 100,000 of them that moved to the north, moved from Gaza Strip and from the northern border, following attacks by Hezbollah, an Iranian proxy and an ally of the Hamas. They had to move to the south. And we have a crisis there as well. And this in addition to the hundreds and hundreds of rockets that are being fired on Israel indiscriminately. Every day there are sirens in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and Hamas openly admitted they're firing these rockets. So where are the rights of the Israeli citizens? Why nobody mentions them? Why we don't hear condemnations of hostage taking? Why we don't hear condemnations to these barbarous attacks? It's all on Israel.
Ambassador, going back to those talks of peace, a lot of people are saying with your annihilation of Hamas, once it is removed, what then? To what end is this war that you are waging on Gaza?
Well, we are currently not discussing what next. You know, when Churchill declared war on the Nazis, he was not talking about what will happen after the war. First our aim is to annihilate Hamas, to destroy it, to remove the terrorist capabilities from Gaza, to remove all terrorists from Gaza, and to provide peace for the people of Israel and for the people of Gaza. We don't want Gaza to suffer. But we need, if there are going to be terrorists in Gaza, everybody is going to suffer. And that's why we need to remove them completely.
And that's probably why that question, Ambassador, keeps coming up, because we are not dealing with the source of the problem here. We are not dealing with generations of occupation. And that is probably why this question of should Hamas be removed, what next? Are you willing to come to the table? But let's talk about the humanitarian crisis that we are currently seeing now. Only 20 trucks are being allowed to deliver aid. This is a drop in the ocean. I mean, 100 trucks, we're being told, at least should be coming into Gaza with much crucial aid. And of course, of the 20 trucks, there's only some bits of food and some equipment for hospitals, no fuel, no water. Why were so few trucks allowed through?
Well, first, to put things in the right perspective, Israel continues to supply water to Gaza. Southern Gaza receives water from Israel. Regarding fuel, there is no fuel crisis in Gaza. And the proof of it is the fact that the Hamas continues firing rockets, one after another, after a third. Until today, from the 7th of October, we have 7,600 rockets fired on Israel. Now, I want to ask you, to fire a rocket, to have a launching site for firing rockets, you know how much energy is required? So where does this energy come from? Why this energy doesn't go to the hospitals? Why this energy doesn't go to the shelters? Because the Hamas is using it. That's the way. It's a terrorist organization. They don't care about the people of Gaza. They don't care about the hospitals. And we could see this failed missile that hit the hospital in Al-Ali hospital in Gaza. And today everybody sees that it was a failed missile attack. But of course, Israel was to blame. But we know whose attack was it. So I ask you, why everybody is speaking about the humanitarian crisis when the Hamas openly abuses all the aid that Gaza gets? And one more question. We have more than 200 hostages in Gaza. Does somebody make sure that these people receive aid? Does somebody make sure that these people receive medication that they require? Does somebody even let the Red Cross, something very, very basic, to visit them? Why we are not hearing the calls for the Hamas to treat these people in a humane way? As of now, nobody knows what's happening to them. Nobody visited them. Nobody's seen them.
Ambassador, as a final question.
Again, I want to stress the Hamas is a terrorist organization that should be destroyed. And this is not only the aim of Israel, it's the aim of all the free-loving states. And we've seen the support from the US, from Europe, from the UK, from most of the democratic world. And this is a fight of Israel, but it's not only of Israel. It's the fight of all free-loving people that condemn terrorism and will not let it happen.
And I guess it is that support that you are receiving from the most powerful countries that is currently being questioned. Ambassador, just as a final question, we are seeing large crowds of people from across the world basically asking for a ceasefire. Back home, of course, we've had also several protests in South Africa. The ANC picketing outside your embassy. The EFF will be picketing outside the Israeli embassy tomorrow. Will you be receiving their memorandum, and just your response to what the ANC and other political parties are calling for?
We are ready to talk to all political parties, all members of the society in South Africa and anywhere in the world, provided that this conversation is going to be in a mutually respected way, and we are ready to receive any letters, any opinions or whatever any of these parties or organizations want to provide us with or present us with. We are open for a dialogue. This is our position. We are not closing ourselves, and anybody, I'm at the embassy most of the working week, as I said before. I'm ready to receive any delegation that will come to say what they think, but also to listen.
Ambassador, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. That is Israeli Ambassador to South Africa, Mr. Eli Belotserkovsky. All right, we take a quick break now. We'll be back straight after this. Stay with us.